to another episode of the Destiny Truthcast. This is episode 29. I am Lost Souls, and today we have an interesting episode. Today it is just RedWingGirl 1999 and I here. ProYunkinator was going to join us, but unfortunately he had a power outage in his neighborhood. So RedWingGirl, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm happy to have you here as always, and so today, since it's just the two of us, we're still going to go over some Destiny stuff, but talk community take on things. The first thing that we have has been obviously this week the SBMM versus CBMM topic has still been raging, really hasn't died down at all, but Bungie did respond to that in the weekly update.
Yeah, it was, we had asked if they would at least give us some sort of a basic outline of how they actually do it. Like, what is their criteria? What is their matchmaking process? Just to get an understanding from them how it works and what their scope is and the prioritizations are. And it was an interesting response. I think a lot of community members, when I read the replies, most of them were Bungie's lying or something is wrong with if they say this is how they're doing it, it must be wrong, and because this isn't how it's working for me, or it doesn't matter how you do it, we don't want it, we just want things to be connection based. And I think that for the most part, there's a perception that above all else, that the connection-based matchmaking will 100% fix all the issues. And I'm not sure that that's really the truth. I mean, I'm not sure if Bungie has a hybrid P2P process or it's just strictly P2P, but I understand the benefits, especially when it comes to multiplayer, why they do it, the way that they do so many modifications with their guns and updates and things of that sort. I understand why P2P for developers is appealing, but I guess what it comes down to is that there are so many people that are dissatisfied with their connection that there has to be some sort of an internal discussion within Bungie of how to improve the matchmaking. I did a little just basic search today because I wanted to understand how popular P2P is, and I looked back and I didn't realize, but Halo Reach was P2P, and Halo Reach, if anybody played Halo Reach and on a consistent basis like I did, what would normally happen is, you would go to black screen if somebody dropped out, or if there was someone on your team that had a poor connection, it would just go to black screen and then it would reset. And then I suppose it would be finding a different host. And really it's comes down to each individual gamer's connection, and, sometimes people's connections, I think, are just poor in general. And, I've had discussions with people on the BNet, and I've had discussions with people, friends of mine, and they're, previously we would have like I used to always run wireless, and I never had any issues with games. And I ran wireless and Reach, as a matter of fact, and I didn't have too many connection issues there that I recall. But I did notice a significant improvement when I went directly wired. But that doesn't change the fact that you can be in an entire lobby of green bar people, and one red bar, even if they're not the host, seems to affect the whole team. And so if somebody drops out of that game because either they lagged out or they decided they couldn't take it, or whatever the reason is they dropped out, the system is trying to find another host. And if that host is, has a fire team of red bars or whatever, the possibility of them choosing another person on that team that has a poor connection, could significantly affect the entire game. And that also works the other way. It may be that like it picks up a person that has a really good connection, and that's fine. So I don't know. I think that in D2 maybe there's going to be some improvements that are being made, but it kind of sounds like P2P is very popular. A lot of games use it, but the issue is that most of these games don't have as much dissatisfaction as it appears Destiny does. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think it does need to be more scrutinized, but not in such a get your SBMM out of here completely because this is just, it's just ruining the game, and I just think that's not helpful either. So I don't know what the next step is, but there's obviously a lot of dissatisfaction with it.
Well, yeah, there's quite a bit there that I want to touch on. Going to Bungie's response, and I know a lot of players wanted to hear from them on this, and you specifically, asked that they give this a kind of a detailed breakdown of what actually goes on. They said, connection quality is always the highest priority factor in Destiny matchmaking. It's the first criteria for the search and the last value we're willing to compromise to set the match. When possible, we introduce you to opponents that will put up a respectable fight, but not at the expense of good connection. We strive for the ideal, but life on the internet is chaotic, so it's inevitable that we'll see red bars or matches that end with the enforcement of a mercy rule. Then they had some questions. They were asked, do you try to force players into a 50% win-loss ratio, which was something that was brought up a lot during the week before this. And they said, nope, as we've stated, your personal performance is a factor in the Guardians you end up confronting in battle, but we do nothing to artificially influence win streaks or alter individual player statistics. And lastly, they were asked, why can't I just relax and enjoy some matches with my friends? To which they responded, we introduced private matches to the Crucible with the launch of Destiny, Rise of Iron, so that you could do just that, take matchmaking into your own hands and make the Crucible what you want it to be. And I think that is the one that really pissed off a lot of people. And actually, Paul Tassi, who does a lot of Destiny writing, and I think a good number of people on the forums and in the community are familiar with on Forbes, actually wrote an article about this. Did you see the article by any chance?
I did not. Only what you had said that he had talked about.
Okay, yeah. So he was talking about the whole matchmaking issue and Bungie's response and the players' dissatisfaction. And so to Bungie's response, he says, what's the problem here? First, some take issue with Bungie's tone, feeling like it's condescending, and that they're not actually addressing the issue at all, simply explaining why they're supposedly right more slowly in the hopes that the dense player base understands. And he also goes on to say, fans overwhelmingly seem to want a system that does not put any weight into skill at all. Even though Bungie claims otherwise, fans feel like they're being herded into a system that allows them no greater than 50-50 win-loss ratio. And I agree and disagree with what he's stating. The fans overwhelmingly, I think, is an overgeneralization, like anything. Do you feel that there is a tone issue and a lack of proper communication in how they're responding to these?
Well, I think it's unfortunately there's a large group of people that have decided that Deej isn't the best person to deliver anything Bungie, right? Like, there's a lot of hate and a lot of mean things that people say and write specifically to Deej and Cosmo. But at the same time, when you've had these issues over and over and over and over again, and people who have purchased this product and want to have a consistent, pleasurable experience and aren't, and nothing seems to improve, then the frustration level increases. So you sort of have everybody reaching a point where there's just no trust, some dissatisfaction to extreme dissatisfaction, and it's on Bungie to explain it in a way that people understand it, and either they can accept it or they can't. But what Bungie also has to do is acknowledge that there are some major issues for people. But, at some point, there has to be some give and take. So I don't know if they make a more expanded or have a more expanded discussion on why these players seem to have really poor experiences, because I don't have that problem. I mean, and so nobody wants to hear that I don't have that problem, right? Like I have a relatively good connection with other players. It's very rare that I see a red bar, and if I do, the game isn't always influenced by the red bar. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Most of my games are pretty smooth. So there has to be a group of people that are experiencing this over and over and over again, and that's really where it comes down to where the feedback comes in. Why are these specific clients having such bad connection to other players, and more importantly, I guess, is them connecting to people outside of their own country. I find it hard to believe that people in England are not hooking up with anybody else in Europe, but are hooking up with people in Latin America. I also know that some internet providers don't work well with other internet providers. I also know that NAT has an issue. I mean, there's like so many issues that if aren't addressed and corrected, you're going to have a bad experience. And so, as we talked about last week, I think that as these games become more popular, now that like Xbox One and PlayStation 4, sort of requires you to have an online gaming experience, how they're going to find a better way to get gamers to play against each other, with each other, without these dogging lag issues. And with everyone's internet being different, and the United States has really crappy internet. I mean, we do countrywide, and how do they address it so that everybody has an equal experience? And I don't know if you can do that if everybody has a different level of internet. So I don't know how they can address it. But in terms of their response, I think that it would be good maybe if they had a Twitch stream and maybe had some developers on, and maybe they could go in a little bit more in depth and maybe give us an insight as to how a typical matchmaking function works, like maybe test it out and say, okay, this is what we expect to happen. But I'm sure that they do a lot of testing, that they know exactly who's connecting to who, how it's being connected, maybe a little bit more in-depth explanation of how it works. And, maybe it doesn't come from Deej. I don't really know. I thought he did a good job of explaining it based on what the devs explained to him. And I didn't think it was condescending. But at the same time, people want to play in Crucible and want to have that kind of fun time. But fun is different for everybody. Some people want, to have good competition and want the challenge, and other people just want to blow it off or get crushed, because that's the other side of it. You could just go in and get completely crushed 10 games in a row, and if that's playing light and having fun, then I guess that's having fun. But I mean, I don't think that's fun. And I certainly think that SBMM is an important part of the matchmaking process, and I hope that they don't get rid of it, even though I know everyone is so against it. I think it's crucial to keep people like me who play this game almost every day and run out of PvE activities and want to play Crucible. I don't want to go in and get crushed, or I'll just turn the game off.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I think is really important to understand. There is a distinction in a couple of things. There's the players that want to just get rid of skill-based matchmaking completely. But again, as you said, there is a portion of this community that it has benefit for. and it makes the game accessible. It makes PvP accessible. I want to read a post from Singe 1080, and I actually tried to get them on to discuss this, but unfortunately they weren't able to join. But they said, in response to the weekly update, "We didn't ask how it worked" was the title of their post. And they said, "I hope I speak for the community when I say this. We aren't asking how matchmaking works or how hand cannon accuracy works. Most of us don't know a lick on the true innermost workings of these systems. What we are asking is if there is a way to change these systems because we don't like them, period. We don't like the matchmaking and we don't like hand cannon bloom. This is what the community is saying, so please don't respond with, 'This is our design goal and here's how we try to achieve that,' because it comes across that you don't care. To you, the system might be working as intended, but is it okay if the vast majority of the player base is dissatisfied and very unhappy with the results?" And so I get where they're coming from, but there's just so much, and I've been called a fanboy and a Bungie apologist and whatnot all week for trying to just see the other side of this, but it's an imperfect system. We've discussed, you and I, we're in two different parts of the country, and so when we're in a fire team together, there's latency, and whichever one of us is the lead, when we go into the tower, the other one's dropping in 5-6 seconds later because of the latency. And so you apply that to a fire team of 3, 4, 5, and 6 with people all in various locations. Then you're looking at the number of players that are playing Destiny at any given time. If you're in Crucible playing Skirmish, well, how many of the players that are online playing in your region, 1 are playing PvP, 2 are playing Skirmish, what type of time of day are you playing? Is it peak time? Beyond that, if it is peak time, yeah, there could be thousands of players in your region online playing Skirmish with you. But we're all in these matches, and a PvP match generally is probably average 8 to 10 minutes per match. So when we get out of these matches, these other players in our region have to not be in their own 8 to 10 minute match. We have to get out of this match, we have to be in orbit queuing, and if we're queuing with the players from the previous match, how many of them are staying, how many of them are dropping out, that affects it. But then these other players in our region, they have to not be in a match. They have to be in that queue in the same 20 to 25 second period to be able to potentially be matched with us. And then they or us have to have a good connection to each other. There could be, X amount of players that are there available, but maybe they're red barred or they're yellow barred, and then it does attempt to put it within a skill range. So like I said, there's just so many factors that go into this, and for everyone to put this all on skill-based matchmaking is just a gross oversimplification. And the problem is that even if everything goes perfect and you're matched with players from your region and it's all connection based and everyone's got the green bars, you get into a game, and if someone has spotty internet, they could have been green when it matched you, and 30 seconds into the game they could go yellow or they could go red. And if they happen to be the host, then the entire lobby is going to go yellow or red. So skill based it's just not a magic bullet, I don't believe, to remove it. And I'm not trying to be a Bungie apologist. I'm not trying to say that there aren't issues with the system, and anyone that says that this lag is something that happened in year 2 and happened with the introduction of skill-based matchmaking, which wasn't introduced in TTK, it was there since the start. People that want to look back and say that year 1 was this perfection, Destiny was perfect in year one. They're living in just a complete just fantasy, because there was lag everywhere in year one. I played ungodly amounts. I played way more PvP than PvE in year one. I lived in the Crucible in year one, and it was laggy. There were way more matches where you dropped into uneven matches where you were dropping in 4 versus 6. Hell, I dropped into a match 1 versus 6 in year one. Joining in matches in progress, players dropping out was way more prevalent in year one. Players quitting out of matches. So it wasn't this perfection that people want to paint it to be. And so I think that here in year 3, it's reached a peak with all the dissatisfaction, and I think 3 years of lag, has put people to a breaking point. But don't act like it's something new and that we've just reached this because skill-based matchmaking suddenly changed the game somehow and put us here, because it's not. It's been 3 years of this, and so can it be better? Should Bungie try to find a better system? Well, yeah, hopefully that they can, and yes, they should. And who knows? Some games may be better, some not. But that's where the discussion is how to get there. And the post saying, switch it up, give us a ranked playlist, give us a social playlist. I see that as something that is a bridge, and Bungie could address that and look at it that way, because maybe that is a solution, to kind of giving people the option, like with optional matchmaking people were asking for in the past. Do I want to be matched up completely on connection? Then I can go to the, just general playlist. Do I want to be matched with players in my skill range? Then I can go to a ranked playlist. And so, like I said, that's something to me that I see as very constructive and a very good way to look at this. But I just do not agree with all the posts just screaming for its removal and throwing out just things that don't exist as reasons for it.
Well, also, though, the downside of that is that then they divide the pool in which they take to connect anyway. I get that they think that the skill-based matchmaking is pushing them out to farther areas of the world, and that's what's causing them poor connections, but that's not entirely the reasons why they have poor connections. So I don't even buy that argument that that's a better way to go, because you're reducing the pool of players who are even going to go into those defined matches. So it seems to me that there maybe perhaps needs to be a better way that these online games in general start to put us gamers in the online world together, where these connections aren't such a huge process of us not being able to play the game that we expect to play.
So we were having a discussion earlier today on the Queen's Wrath, and we're in this drought in the game where there's not a lot to do. No one on our friends list seem to be playing. I mean, this might be the first week that we don't run a raid since I started playing with you, and so why don't Bungie bring back a Queen's Wrath event? They've got all the gear in the game because they brought it back. It's all up to current levels. Why not give us those weekly or those daily missions, the Queen's Wrath Nightfall type event? Why don't they bring something like that back and do something for PvE on this side of the game?
I don't know. That's the thing that I don't understand about the Queen stuff. Like, the Taken King ended, the Queen's dead, and it's just like nothing. Crickets. It's like Rise of Iron came, we learned about, all of those folks and played that DLC out or whatever, but they upgraded all of the Queen's stuff, the armor, the weapons, they've got the ship, and it's all there. It's all there. They did all the work. They upgraded everything, and they really have to. They really have to do an event. They have to do a monthly event like they do with Iron Banner. And I know that I'm saying they have to, like I'm stomping my feet on the ground and whatever. I'm just serious. They just have to, because PvE is just not sustainable doing the same strike rotation over and over again. They have to do that with the Queen, because at least it would be something to do, to look forward to for new gear, and get this, if you keep getting the same pieces of gear with different roles, that's fine. But if you have to wait another 3 weeks only to get the same piece of gear, that's frustrating. And people want the Queen's gear, and it's still relevant, storyline. People want to do the Queen stuff, and I just don't understand why they don't offer something like that. It seems like such a simple addition for content during this period while we wait between at least now and SRL, and then if they're not going to do anything until D2 comes out, I don't know what they expect us to do, because people aren't going to keep doing the raids every week, and SRL gets kind of boring quick, and I don't know.
I'm curious, and I will pose this question to those that are listening to the podcast. If Bungie were to bring back Queen's Wrath, and they put up on their This Week at Bungie, hey, next Tuesday Queen's Wrath is coming back. There's going to be daily missions for endgame level rewards. There's going to be a Queen's Wrath Nightfall type event. How many players would be logging in that currently are hibernating from this game and taking their breaks on hiatus? How many players would log back into play? Because I think that it would be a substantial number. I think that people would really be drawn to it.
I agree. I just think it's something for PvE players to play. And I'm sorry, but Prison of Elders, that you get one etheric light and it gives you like 100 rep. I mean, that's just not enough. I mean, you can't do Prison of Elders to death. It's just, it's not even worth it. It's such a missed opportunity. I don't know why they can't insert daily bounties, or even, in my opinion, like a quest line like they do with the Plague Lands. With you could do the Forge and things of that nature. Like, add something like that.
Yeah, and for it to be something that's been so requested, and people have wanted the Queen's Wrath to come back since launch, but like I said, since Rise of Iron has come out and this gear is there again, it just makes no sense unless they're holding out for some spring update that's going to revolve around the Queen. That's the only thing I could see with them holding back on making this gear accessible. And then we had a question on Twitter about SRL and whether or not it'll be another Festival of the Lost.
Yeah, so I think Mayhem requested that, right? He wanted to know if it was going to be like buying a lot of stuff from Tess.
Yeah, I believe that it was Mayhem, and yes, I believe that that is the thought. If it's going to be where, unlike year one in Festival of the Lost, where you were doing candy sacks and trying to get stuff, that this year it was pretty much through Eververse is how you were getting rewards, and if that's the route that they're going to go with SRL as well.
I suspect that it will be, because if you remember last SRL, they had a book, and you had to do so many quest lines, or you had to do so many things within those, and so it's likely that you're going to have to probably purchase another book. I don't think that, they didn't drop enough stuff. They don't do it right with silver dust either. They don't drop enough of the ornaments and the silver dust and things for people to actually use that in the economy to benefit them. You know, like we were talking about previous, like with dusty ornaments, like you don't have enough silver dust to actually take advantage of the dusty ornaments to get some of the previous Iron Banner gear. And there's missed opportunities there, right? Like you know, people would farm for these things if there was a way to get them. And I just think that based on what we've seen with how they've run the Festival of the Lost, it's going to be the same way. You're going to go through their quest line. It's going to drop, you know, increments of some rewards that you'll deal with and you'll enjoy, or you're just going to throw money at your screen because you want everything right now. And a lot of people always do that.
You also touched upon, you know, the ornaments and silver dust and whatnot, and one of the things that ProYunkinator wanted to discuss before he was unable to join was ideas to rework Chroma. And I think that, in my opinion, it was a something cool that they added with the Chroma. Really enjoyed it. I know that we would get various armor sets, and you know, when we got our future war cult capes and go find shaders and then match up various chromas to go with it, and we did some really cool stuff once Chroma was introduced with our characters. And I think that they made a mistake in taking that away, and they said that the ornaments were going to be an evolution to the Chroma. But to me, they've really been a step back, and I think that going forward, I don't think the ornaments are the way to go. You know, it's a cool idea for weapons, and that's something I'll get to that we discussed earlier in a minute. But as far as the gear, I think the ornaments have been pretty much a failure in the implementation, and I think a Chroma type system was much better.
Why do you think the ornaments were a failure? Because they're hard to get?
I think they've been a failure on multiple levels. I think, you know, the fact that they make players get the Radiant Treasures to get the ones to do for the Iron Lord set, and then, you know, they're so varied, you know, in how they function. You know, you've got the Iron Lord set where you put the ornament on, and it completely changes the gear. You know, it makes the chest a different chest piece. It makes the legs different legs. It makes the arms, different helmet. Gives you a mullet. Whereas with the Trials gear, it adds the hologram type effects to them. And then you go to the Raid gear, where it makes red Siva glow come out of slits in the armor. And so it's completely different in the effect it has on the sets of gear, which then bring it to the fact that it's only available on those sets of gear and not on faction armor or whatnot. You know, it's just very disjointed in my opinion, and very dysfunctional. You know, why isn't it, if they were going to do the hologram thing, they should have done it across all the sets of gear. You know, if they were going to make it change the complete look of the piece of armor, like with the Iron Lords, that's what Ornaments should have done. The Raid gear, I just think it's a waste, making the Siva light come out of it. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought Chroma, you know, it was a lot more functional, gave you a lot more, you know, it wasn't a lot, you know, it wasn't anything really in depth. You were just changing the color on certain pieces, but you had, you know, whatever 6 color options or whatever it was. And it just seemed like it was more of actual customization than with the ornaments. The ornaments don't really give you that level of personalization, and like I said, it's just very disjointed in how it's implemented.
Well, I think the Trials gear ornaments are awesome. They're very, very elaborate. But the Raid gear ornaments are very understated, and you're right, they're just singular. You can't really change color or make them look any more interesting. And so that does sort of limit you in that way. And it's a little disappointing because I always consider Trials and the Raid sort of The PvE kind of crowd, that's their end game, and for the PvP, that's their end game, but, it's not really equal in my opinion. But I don't think that they're bad. I mean, I like the fact that on the Iron Lord's gear that it does completely change. I mean, you're essentially getting two different pieces of armor.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If that's how the ornaments function, why isn't that the function? And why isn't there the option to, if you ask me, it should be a combination of the Iron Lord set and the trials, which is what I thought it was going to be, that there were going to be multiple variations of armor pieces. Like when you had, your chest piece or your helm, there would be different ornaments that would change. They said it would change the geometry of these things. So why not give you the option to put, a hologram effect on it, like is on the trials gear? Because it is cool, the hologram effects that they have, but give multiple, to choose from, or give you the option to completely change the piece of gear, like on the Iron Lord set. But it doesn't go far enough, Like I said, it's disjointed, because to me it's like two different things, the changing the gear piece completely and the adding the effect on top of it. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's fleshed out, like it's properly implemented, and it needs to be something that is accessible, and it's in all the pieces of gear. It needs to be on faction gear. It needs to be on the Archon Forge gear sets, and it needs to function the same across all of them. And the raid is just a waste. I will stick with that, in my opinion. Crickets.
Crickets. I just, I already kind of said what I said. I think it should have been more evenly, like it should have been a little bit cooler, but, it is what it is, and I don't think the ornaments are a bad thing. I just think that the raid ornaments themselves should have been a little bit different. And I also sort of agree with you that the ornaments should just been like the same thing. Like if you wanted to put an ornament that you got, it didn't have to come out of getting to the lighthouse. I mean, that's really kind of too bad for people that do trials but they don't get to the lighthouse, so they'll never get an ornament for that cool kitty cloak.
Do you see the ornaments as a progression from Chroma? Or do you miss having the Chroma as well?
Well, I have Chroma gear that I still can use, and so I don't miss it. I have it still, and so do you.
But I'm saying, like for instance, our Archon Forge sets for the Warlock, or the raid set, you don't think that they would benefit if they were Chroma enabled?
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, it would be cool if you could add Chroma onto anything you wanted, for sure.
Yeah, and that's just my thought on it, is that, if it's an evolution, it's not really an evolution if it's not on everything, because we lost the ability to customize a huge chunk of our gear when they went to the ornaments. So I don't know. That's kind of, I guess, where I'm trying to get with it. Besides the fact that, like I said, it's fragmented, that we can customize less overall than we could before.
I agree. It'd be cool if we could do Archon stuff, or even Iron Banner stuff. Like regular Iron Banner.
And then I guess the last thing that we bring up will be the question of whether we think that Bungie, because of this drought, and however long we have until D2 releases, the speculation, will they or won't they update Vault of Glass and Crota and King's Fall to end game again, to open up things for people to do.
I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't either. I know that Gathalion was speculating a week or two ago on Twitter that he feels that it's something that they may do at some point. I don't think they will. I think they've made it obvious in statements over the course of the last year and a half that those things are in the past, but I think a lot of people feel like it's something that might happen in the spring, and so it's interesting to discuss, but I do not personally feel either that it's something that will come back.
Well, they've said it so many times that for them to do it would just be contrary to what they've been saying.
Yeah, but it goes back to the PvE though, and what do you do to draw players back in? Because I think that the drop off in Rise of Iron has been a lot faster and a lot more severe than previous expansions, and without that PvE event monthly, which again there should be one bi-weekly. We should have Iron Banner, 2 weeks later a PvE event, another 2 weeks later Iron Banner again. But that's not happening, and we've seen again we probably won't raid this week, which will be really tragic if we don't. So hopefully we can find a way to get one in. But the drought is real, and the players moving on and playing other games that have come out is real. I know you've been playing, Skyrim, you've been playing Dishonored, and so, what does Bungie do to draw players back into this game?
I don't know, but they really need to do something. The PvE thing is really, man. But, we have to try to keep in mind that they have already announced that they will indeed to have a path where they are going to be introducing more content. So I think they recognize that this is a drought, and they do lack a lot of content. And we've been talking about this for a very long time about doing things from the PvE side. So I think they are going to address it. It's just that they there's not a lot of motivation on their part to just reskin things and do what everybody complains that they always do, because no one ever's happy when they do that either. And I'm sure if they upgraded Vault of Glass and Crota and the Taken King, everybody would come out and say, "Oh, here comes Bungie again, reskinning things," and they'll be unhappy about that because their money didn't go for new content. So they can't win for losing. So I think it's an opportunity. Most players, I think, that are from year one do remember the Queen's Wrath and remember its short period of time that it was here, never to come back again. And I'm surprised that they didn't take advantage of that after the Taken King, because that was all about the Queen. And it's just, man, I really wish that they would bring that back. I really think that right there would be something that people would really get into. I mean, I know I would, and I know a lot of my friends would. So, just on my small pool of who I've talked to, I think it's something that they should look into. Vault of Glass, I would love to do that again and get that content. I would love to do all of it again. I don't, I have nothing but good thoughts when I think about going back in and playing Vault of Glass. But I just think it's a lot of work just for upgraded armor. I mean, the armor is one thing, but the difficulty is altogether different. I just don't know.
Yeah, I think that they've got such an opportunity with the Queens. I just hope they're listening, and it's something that they hear and understand that people are really passionate about it, and they have to do something. They have to do something to. They can't just ignore PvE forever. It's something that has to be addressed, because it's just not in a healthy place right now, in my opinion. So I guess now we're at the final segment, and just you and I, but still want to see if there was a favorite moment you've had in the last week or so playing Destiny.
I do not have a favorite moment. I've been playing Dishonored all week.
And how's that been? What have been your thoughts on Dishonored?
It's a really good game. I love it. Played Dishonored 1, so I was really looking forward to 2. So I'm at the final boss actually right now. I have to beat her, and I will be finished with it. So I think when I looked back, I put in 24 hours or something like that on the game so far.
Well, I know you were looking forward to it for a long time, so it's been as good as you were hoping it would be?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've already put in 24 hours, and I've gotten most of all of the collectibles out of it that I could. And you have two options. You can go in and you can play really aggressively and kill everything, and then you can go in stealth mode and not kill anything. And so my next run through will be stealth mode, because I kind of went in and killed everything.
No mercy the first run, huh?
Oh, but man, the cutscenes are so awesome. You cut them in half, and their heads pop off, and there's blood all over the place. It's really fun.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I watched the trailer of it, but I haven't seen any actual real gameplay of someone playing it. So it's cool to hear that it's something that lived up to the hype. So I don't know if it's something I'll ever try out and play, but it's cool when games like that release and they live up to what you want them to be.
So what is your favorite moment?
So my favorite moment, and I haven't been playing a lot this week either. Like I said, we haven't done the raid. Sat in orbit a lot this week, padding their login numbers, floating in space. But my favorite moment was actually after we finished the podcast last week, and we went to do gameplay footage for the YouTube version. And it's funny, we're talking about all the problems with PvP, and everyone's sick of PvP and fed up with Destiny's garbage PvP, and there's the PvE drought, and there needs to be more PvE. But my favorite moment was going, and I will tell you that as we played and we recorded that footage, it's probably the most fun I've had playing Destiny PvP in over a year. And the matches were clean. They were competitive. I know you had some awesome games. Topped the leaderboards a couple times. It was just fun. I was using my Hopscotch Pilgrim, which I got and started using the Last Iron Banner, and I fucking hated every weapon in this game during the Taken King. I loved my year one Crucible setup, and I've never felt comfortable in year two with any weapons, and always switched. And using the hopscotch, and just as we played those matches, it was just fun. And for all the talk about what Destiny PvP is, I mean, I don't know if you'd agree, but to me it was the exact opposite, those games that we played. And it was just a really good time.
Yeah, like I said, my experience too has been that the games haven't been laggy, and the connections have been good, and there have been competitive, but there were a lot of blowouts too. I mean, there were some uneven out, where it was like 20,000 to 7,000. We were crushing people, and then we would get in the next one, and it would just be the same. We would get crushed. So I don't know what the answer is. I really don't, but it was fun. I had fun too.
Well, I guess that puts a wrap on another episode of the Destiny Truthcast. I want to thank you for being here, as always, RedWingGirl.
Sure. Oh, and buff auto rifles.
And buff auto rifles. And ProYunkinator, I know you're listening, and I know we tried. We had you in here, and it just didn't want to work for whatever reason. So hopefully next week we will have you on. And anyone else in the community, if you're interested in coming on and talking Destiny and joining us, we'd love to have you on and hear your thoughts on the game. To everyone on the forums participating, commenting, we appreciate your thoughts on the episodes and on what's going on in the game. And I hope you all have a wonderful day wherever you are. And RedWingGirl, I hope you have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.